Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you happen to find yourself on the world at the moment, and welcome to QS in Conversation. I am Anton John Crace, and I am the editor and program designer at QS Quacquarelli Symonds. Now, this edition of QS in Conversation is brought to you in partnership with Coursera for Campus and our diamond partner as well, Tech de Monterrey. We'll be looking today at obesity, a golden era for health, nutrition, and education in the Americas. And this comes in the lead up to our inaugural QS Americas conference next week. If you'd like to register, or if you haven't already, I should say, you can do so at qsamericas.org. In the meantime, however, today I am joined by Professor Carlos Aguilar-Salinas, the head of nutrition and medical research at the Instituto Nacional de Ciencias, Medicas, y Nutricion. I apologize, my Spanish is not as great as I hope it would be, as well as Professor Sergio Serna-Saldívar, who's the head of CIDPRO, the Center for Proteins Research and Development, head of the Nutriomics and Emerging Technologies Research Group, School of Engineering and Sciences at Tecnológico de Monterrey, and Dr. Sonia Massari, who is a researcher at the Educational Area Development for the Barilla Foundation. Welcome, everybody, to the panel. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, let's start off at the moment. What we're going to do is have some brief introductory remarks. So I will pass off to Professor Sergio to do his first. Thank you very much, Professor Sergio.
Yeah. Hi, and thank you for the invitation to this seminar. As you know, I'm from Mexico, and Mexico is one of the countries that has one of the highest obesity index in the world. We currently occupy the second place in obesity rate among adults, and the first place in infants or children. And obviously, the obesity-related diseases are the main cause of death among the Mexican population. We currently have about 65% of the current deaths related to the chronic diseases derived from obesity. So we have a research area or research activities related to the diminishing this obesity rate and chronic diseases through the better administration of foods. And in that particular area, we're working very extensively with phytochemical compounds, antioxidants compounds. We're also working with new novel proteins that we know affect gene expression of these chronic diseases and obesity. And also we have a line very much related to obesity, which is the microbiome, intestinal microbiome. So I'm very much open to answer any questions regarding these issues, and I pass the word to the other members.
Thank you very much for that, Professor Sergio. And that reminds me, the audience is very much a part of this as the panelists are. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A button down the bottom there. In the meantime, Professor Carlos, I'll welcome you to give your introductory remarks.
Hello to everybody. Thank you for the invitation to this live panel. It's for me a pleasure to share the screen with Dr. Massari and Dr. Serna. I will support with data the statement that Sergio did a few moments ago. Latin America is one of the areas in which obesity has grown remarkably in the last few decades. As you see, almost every country in Latin America has shown a growing trend in the prevalence of obesity, especially for Mexico. Specifically for our country, I show you the prevalence from 1994 to 2018. Mexico has the privilege to have nationwide population surveys every 6 years that has allowed us to demonstrate the huge impact to our health that has obesity-related conditions. As you see in the screen, the prevalence has almost doubled from 1994 to 2018 in the obesity rates. In contrast, the overweight rates has kept constant all over this time period. Also, the prevalence is difference between women and men. As you see, the prevalence is remarkably bigger among women. However, the growing trend is bigger for men. Obesity is a multifaceted disease. No, the obesity is not the same for a grade 3 obese individual that has premature mortality and disability compared to the metabolically healthy obese that do not influence the expected lifetime. There are a few data about incidence in our Latin American region. I can share you some of our research in which we followed almost 6,000 individuals, apparently healthy blue-collar workers for 3 years. During this time period, 63% of them remained weight stable. However, more than 1/3 of them changed from lean to obese or the other way around. In the left part of the slide, you can see in several colors the change that has from the metabolically healthy lean individuals, and in the other stream, the obese, unhealthy individuals. As you can see, almost 25% of the metabolically lean individuals in a 3-year period become obese. In contrast, only 1.2% of the individuals that are obese and unhealthy, they become lean individuals. As a result, the health picture of Mexico, measured by the global burden of the disease parameters, is widely dominated by obesity-related conditions. Diabetes, coronary heart disease, stroke, chronic kidney disease are the main causes of premature disability and mortality. I'll finish my presentation highlighting the several opportunities that we have to fight against obesity. Environmental, government, markets, communities should be involved in this fight. However, in the center of this is the individual. If we don't put the central attention in each one of us, the education of the individuals, the education of the physicians, we will spend a lot of resources having marginal results. Thank you for this opportunity for doing an initial statement, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Professor Carlos. And finally, I will pass to you, Dr. Sonia, to provide your opening remarks as well.
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation, and thank you for this presentation. I'm actually going a little bit transversal to the topic because in the title of today, we got actually obesity, but we got also the word health. And my point today will be that we don't have only one health concept. I mean, we got the health of the human beings and the health of the planet. So the point is how we can actually educate people to understand that by working and getting good health for us, we will have also a good health for the planet. So starting from this points, from this concept, from this idea of the culture of sustainability, the foundation of Barilla that I'm today representing was working in the past few years to understand what, how much the students, how much the young people knows about this concept. So the relation between the climate, the planet, and of course what we eat, so our food choice. And we actually started with a survey 2 years ago. This survey was actually done in Italy, and the main purpose was to understand how much young people knows about the Sustainable Development Goals and how much they know about the sustainability, how they actually connect the word sustainability with the word of food. the information that we received by this survey was quite interesting, because we understood also if the students and many young people are involved in the Fridays for Futures, and of course they are very engaged on what does it mean sustainability. Most of them don't know what does it mean sustainability and what is the relation between sustainability and food and nutrition. And what I also underline many times when I present the data we collected by this survey is the fact that for most of the students that were interviewed during the survey, 60% say that the Sustainable Development Goals are the goals for actually tomorrow, not for today. So primarily, this is a point related to responsibility, how much the young people feel responsible for the next future, and how much they understand their food choice and their food behaviors can really impact not only on their health, but on the health of the planet. So practically what we have to do with school, what we have to do to all levels of school, and what we had to actually teach. This was the purpose of the Foundation Barilla when 2 years ago we started developing a toolkit and tools to help teachers and professors to teach in their classroom about the complexity of food and practically how we can connect the word sustainability through food to the human health and the health of the planet. So again, this concept is very strong and definitely is based on the culture, on the word culture. I only mention this, that the idea of food studies, so the curricula of food studies started almost 15 years ago in the United States, not in Italy, but in the United States, by including food culture side of curricula of dietitian and nutrition, which is something it was revolutionary at that point. Nowadays, we're living in a completely different academic world, but still we need to cover the gap that is related to the fact that many times we focus on nutrition, we focus on the health of human beings, but we don't actually see how this is related with all the resources we are using, and of course, how much we're taking care of the planet. I hope to be able to go more in depth in this by the discussion and the conversation we will have it. And of course, also giving you some example of the toolkit and the tools that we prepared for professors to teach this kind of topics in their classroom.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Sonia. And Dr. Sonia has provided us with a number of links to references of the points that she was making as well. So we'll share those later and also within the chat very shortly. A lot of the points that are brought up so far are quite interesting in regards to, I suppose, a macro and micro impact of health and food, particularly as it relates to obesity. Dr. Sergio, I wanted to sort of bounce off your presentation first. We discussed a little bit about the trends so far in obesity in the Americas, I should say, apologies. But I wanted to move a little bit further. What is impacting health and nutrition, or how is this impacting health and nutrition in the region? And importantly, what can be done in your position, or in your view, I should say?
Yeah. As I indicated before, obesity is the central axis of the prevalence of all chronic diseases. I'm talking about the three major chronic diseases, which are high cholesterol, hypertension, and diabetes. Besides that, obesity is also related to oxidative stress, and oxidative stress is related to cancer. So our concern is that about 65 or more people that are dying today is because of these chronic diseases. So what can we do in order to prevent oxidative stress and chronic diseases is precisely lowering the body mass index. For instance, in Mexico, here in Mexico, our public health, the hospitals occupy 3 out of 4 beds due to chronic diseases and obesity-related diseases. That's impressive. And the healthcare, the country spends about $100,000 million pesos, which is equivalent to $5 billion, just to treat this obesity and chronic diseases. So, for instance, an obese or morbid obese patient, morbid obese is the individual who has a body mass index higher than 35. They have twice as much possibilities of a stroke, 3 and 4 times more possibilities of hypertension, and 3 and 7 times more possibilities of developing type 2 diabetes, which, by the way, is our main concern here in Mexico, because we have about 20 million Mexicans who are type 2 diabetic. So what can we do in order to lower the alarming rate of obesity? Obviously, we should do a lot of education to the people, and especially in terms of reducing the amounts of servings per day. There is one very important statistics. In 1970, about 50 years ago, the average Mexican consumed about 1.86 kilograms of food per day. And today, the same individual consumes 2.2 kilograms of food per day. If you analyze the quality of the food, it's basically the same. It has the same energy density, the same protein, the same vitamins, the same everything. Okay, it's practically identical. But the higher consumption of servings is the main problem here in Mexico, because the higher consumption of calories obviously induces obesity, and obesity is, once again, very much related to the chronic diseases.
Thank you very much for that. I was doing very quick calculations for any of the audience who's wondering why I was shuffling about. 2.2 up from 1.8 is only about a 22% increase in the amount of consumption per day, and this is enough to have such a significant impact. Is that correct, Professor Sergio?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That 22% more caloric intake induces obesity, overweight, and obesity, and then the chronic diseases. Okay. Basically, the amount of saturated fats, monounsaturated proteins, vitamins, etc., are basically the same. When you compare a typical diet, an average diet of today's diet versus the 1970 diet. That's very, very interesting. That's the main reason, in my opinion, of why we have such high levels of obesity. And it is attributed to the serving size. For instance, a soft drink in the 1970s was about 250 milliliters, and today you go to a supermarket or a convenience store and you buy a soft drink of 600 milliliters with 13% sugar in it, okay? So there is a huge difference in serving sizes, and therefore in the caloric intake when you compare an individual today versus the 1970 typical diet.
Thank you very much. Professor Carlos, do you have anything further to add in terms of the impacts that this is having on health and nutrition, and what can be done about it?
Yes, thank you, Anton. The obesity is the interaction between genetic and environmental factors. Since we cannot modify genetics, we must focus in the environmental factors. not only the amount of calories should be considered, or also the universal trend is to only consider the quality of the food. In Mexico, for example, one of the most typical dishes that we consume is beans. And contrary to has been observed in other areas, the consumption of beans has gone down, and it has been substituted by ultra-processed products, high density, highly caloric products, as soft drinks or pastas or rice, that they are very cheap. The cost of the calories has decreased remarkably, but the quality of the food has been modified by economic factors. Also, the access to fruits and vegetables has decreased over the time, that in the past it was really common to have fruits and vegetables all over the food environment. I think that the food environment is a main target for the obesity prevention, but also there are other socioeconomical factors that should be considered, as physical activity, as depression, the changes in the dynamics of the families, as migrations, as built environment, as our ability to walk in the streets instead of using the car. So there are so many factors that one single tax or one single political action is almost impossible that could have a significant result in the short time. We need transversal programs in order to have a significant effect in the short term. It's just a general overview of your question.
Thank you very much for that, Professor Carlos. A lot of your comments there in terms of the physical activity, driving cars, family commitments, but also moving away from eating beans, but towards highly processed foods, which are readily available, occurs to me that there is a degree of convenience there to that as well. Is there a degree to which current lifestyles are sort of forcing a lot of people into these eating and physical activity habits?
Yes, the socioeconomical factors is the main driver of these changes in the habits of the population. You have to walk a lot to find fruits and vegetables. In contrast to find a soft drink, you have to walk 1 block or 2 blocks. And also the price it's completely different. The lack of structural schedules in many families make the preparation of the meals very short. So people prefer to take out some processed food out of the freezer and to prepare and to cook some few minutes instead of the usual time that they take to prepare each of the meals. And also the time in which they consume the meals is very short, or it could be in the transportation process or in the office, lowering the quality of the intake process.
Thank you very much for that. There's a couple of the questions I want to ask, but I do want to make sure that I pass over to Dr. Sonia as well. Now, Dr. Sonia, you have less of experience as within being a nutritionist. You are more in terms of the sustainability area, but I think that it does fit quite nicely in terms of, rather than discussing the health and nutrition impacts within the region and what can be done, but the environmental impacts that are occurring because of the highly processed foods and sustainably sourced sort of food. So what is the impact at the moment that's having on the climate and the environment?
Well, actually, let me go one step back from what it was said before, which I think is really interesting, on the fact that the solution to all of those scenarios that were described very well right now is really in the education. So instead of just seeing what is the balance or what is the connection with, I think the importance is just like trying to teach the people what is the connection, but also trying to illustrate by simplifying, by getting the people this complex world of food more simpler, and actually giving the people the keys to understand what does it mean to get some food choice instead of another. So for this reason, and also for going closer to the scenario they were describing in the South of America, I want to mention the concept, the illustration that was created and was launched recently by the Foundation Barilla, called it the double pyramid model, that then was actually presented by 7 different models. And one of this is really based on South of America. And that means that first of all, let me describe what is this double pyramid that has to be in a way understood. We got from one side the health pyramid, which is based on many items that were described before, which I don't know if everybody is so familiar with the cardiovascular diseases and how this is actually connected with many of the nutrients that were quoted before by the other speakers. But definitely the health pyramid is based on the fact that in this case is based on 18 food groups, based first of all of their impact on cardiovascular diseases, and more generally on health and their origin. So we got actually what is actually animal or plant-based, and what are their nutritional characteristics. And those groups are actually proposed in 7 different layers. In the links I provided, you have also like a very short summary and the infographics on how this pyramid is created. And on the other side, you got the climate pyramid, which is actually, it actually presents the production of products of animal origin, makes what kind of contribution they make to climate change. And if we see both on the same side, we see that what we can eat from our health, it does have a good impact on the other side in terms of climate. This model was created for the Mediterranean diet, which is, maybe you know, it is considered a sustainable and healthy diet. By launching in the past 2 months the idea of 7 different pyramids, 7 different diets all around the world, and one is based on South of America. The idea is the fact that everywhere in the world we can get resources to get an healthy diet and a sustainable diet at the same time. So I understand the point about getting through the food, getting to also what before was called food desert. Nowadays we don't call it food desert anymore. So how long it takes to go to good quality food. But on the other side, it's also important to give the idea to the people that we need to balance. All food can be part of an healthy and sustainable diet. It really depends on the balance and the proportion and the portion we got in. So for a long time, we were giving the people the list of what you had to eat, how much protein or not protein. But nowadays, we actually need to find a way of giving like a balanced diet that provide the people the idea that they can actually having a good quality of life because they are able to work for themselves, but also for the community in which they work and the resources they have in their own territory and place. It's a little bit transversal on the things we were discussing before, but it's also very important again for creating and for designing together what we call it the culture of sustainability, which is actually based on sustainability, but it can only be provided through food. So the food become a key concept that we have to use it for this. I think this double pyramid is quite interesting to be analyzed from the nutrition point of view, but also from the environmental point of view. And also, I want to quote also the importances of the fact that the climate pyramid, it's based on the Suitable Life Project database, which is classified different food based on their carbon footprints. And this database is actually available and it can be also watched by the links I provided. And it can be really interesting also from the nutrition point of view, because it can be in a way something that supports a different way of eating and a different behavior. As we know, it's not enough to inform people to change their food behaviors, but you have also to educate and to get them engaged So how we can engage people, how we can actually help them to change behavior. Honestly, maybe just to give them the information or is not enough. You have to create community engagement. You have to give them the right tools. You have to give them the right educational tools, which is not like so easy many times. And you have to involve many stakeholders in to be able to get a more changeable perspective. So not just like I'm going more in the solution instead of just like giving a definition of the problem. Let me say that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sonia. That's absolutely fine. Quite often I find that we do focus on the problem rather than the solution. So it's always good to get the solutions a little bit more. I want to pass back to Professor Carlos to move a little bit further in that, because it's one of the questions we have written down previously is around the work that universities should be doing within community engagement that Dr. Sonia has moved towards. For you, Professor Carlos, what is the role of the institution outside of the institution within the within the wider community?
Thank you, Anton, for the question. It's very relevant. I support the statement by Sonia about focusing in the solutions. The education should be target all the communities, the people, health professionals, decision makers should be educated about this process, including food, psychology, built environment, all the components of our lifestyle that contributes to obesity. And for that, the universities play a major role. The universities should be a scientific and easy to understand source of information for the whole community. It should be a reference in which everybody can get the information that they require. But also they should target the population by transferring the easy to understand knowledge to the own communities, the university communities, and also to prepare health professionals to impact low-income areas and hospital-based networks. So the university has a big challenge to translate the knowledge into practice and to be the light of scientific knowledge to share with the whole community.
Thank you very much, Professor Carlos. Professor Sergio, do you have anything to add on top of that around the role of the universities within the wider community?
Yeah, I think as Professor Carlos indicated, I think we have a huge responsibility of educating people in terms of the nutritional value of different foods. I'll give you an example here in Mexico. About 50 years ago, the diet was based on whole maize and whole common beans. Basically, 75% of the calories were derived from these two whole grain foods. Today, the average Mexican consumes less than half of the common bean that the people consumed 50 years ago. From 24 kilograms, it went down to about 10 kilograms only. And this is very, very important because we change our dietary patterns towards the consumption of more caloric foods with less dietary fiber, less phytochemicals, less nutraceuticals, and compounds that we know prevent oxidative stress and obesity. So I think education has a lot to do with the obesity problem here in Mexico. We need to educate more people, and especially when they're child or children in the infant age.
Thank you very much for that, Professor Sergio. I want to move on, and I can see instantly I have two questions come through from the audience as well, which we'll get to very quickly, or shortly, I should say. If you do want to ask a question, please feel free to use that Q&A. Dr. Sonia, one of the very first comments that you made was that 60% of young people that you surveyed said the Sustainable Development Goals were goals for tomorrow and not today. There have been a number of climate related reports that have come out recently that are showing that very much things need to be done right now. I suppose we've talked a little bit about the double period, but is there with an increased view towards developing food for sustainability, is there a sustainable model for public health, or one that can be adapted that sort of takes a more holistic approach and also encourages students and young people to be active participants in that?
Well, there is no one model, but there are like regional model. I believe one interesting point is also to see the impact of food education. When you see many food policies around in many countries, you can actually connect the two things. The countries in which do you have good food education models, then you have also food policy working. Otherwise, it's hard to find it. But anyway, I think also in terms of education, we mentioned before where we are going. We should actually go to a kind of curricula that is more transdisciplinary, means that brings together different disciplines to teach about food. I'm not talking only about nutrition, but I'm really thinking about the food system in general, from production, distribution, consumption, and commercialization of food, but also post-consumption. We didn't mention that, but we are still living in a world where we died because of the obesity, but we died also because we don't have access to food. So this is the big paradox. Instead, we're still living. But secondly, we waste food where actually with the same waste of resources, we could actually feed 3-4 times the people that need it. So that's the second paradox in which we're living. So we should not forget the entire system in which the nutrition is part of. And I believe also, if I can say something about that, from our experience and from what we are doing, we are trying to get the professor, the tools, but also the competences for teaching this kind of competences, this kind of knowledge and this kind of skills to the students. Because as we used to say, the students need to understand that there are human beings in an ecosystem, so they're part of a biodiversity that they need to take care of. They will be citizens, and as we mentioned before, policymakers do have a role, and as a citizens, you have a role as well, because you are part of this kind of change. And third, they will be the professionals of the future. So they will become managers, they will become nutritionists, they will become educators themselves. And this is exactly what we have to work with universities to provide them careers that include this kind of knowledge. So again, the importance is not to focus on one of the things related to food, but instead seeing this from all of the perspective. One of the data that I didn't mention in the survey is the fact that many of the young people that were interviewed connected the word sustainability with environment. And this is quite clear also by the movement Fridays for Future. So what we see, many of those, like 13%, they actually connected with the economy, 9% with the society, but only 9% were able to connect the word nutrition, and so the word of food, with the word of sustainability. That means that we need to really provide the students from what they are young to when they are adults at the university, not only the information, but also the opportunity to get the connection between those different topics, which is very important.
Thank you very, very much for that, Dr. Sonia. Professor Sergio, I saw your head nodding along with Dr. Sonia. Do you have anything that you'd like to add onto that?
No, not really. Not really.
Perfect. Okay. The other thing too is that Dr. Sonia has hit on quite a number of different areas, including working with universities, but of course universities have a lot of different disciplines that they look into that are not necessarily entirely related to the subject, but have an impact on that. Professor Carlos, there's been a lot of things in the past, such as I think in New York, there was a sugar tax for soft drinks or soda, soft drink. That I'm showing my Australianism at the moment. Dr. Carlos, do you see any sort of other policy changes or research areas, I should say, rather, to influence those policy changes or the effectiveness of certain types of public awareness campaigns?
Thank you, Anton. The taxes, the food taxes, I think that the main value of this intervention is to highlight the lack of nutritional values of such products. At least in my experience in Mexico and in other countries, the selection of the food is not modulated by the taxes, because in the vast majority of the countries, the size of the tax is not as high as to reconsider the option to be selected. However, for example, the new generations now are well aware about the negative effect of soft drinks, but they are shifting not for the cost, but by the commitment for their health. Regrettably, we have another phase of this problem, that is poverty. Obesity is also a marker of poverty, especially in Latin America. So we have to move down the prices of the healthy food, and also in a gradual way, also to increase the cost of the unhealthy choices. There are several movements about this. For example, the Baltimore City area is one of the leaders in these policies. For example, the redistribution of the food choices in the markets had a huge impact on the food selection of the communities, sending away to the back of the markets the unhealthy choices and putting in the front fruit and vegetables, and also to stimulate the local production of food. And in this way, they have increased the access of healthy food, decreasing the prices and decreasing the exposure to the unhealthy products. And this goes with education. I think that the key driver in the obesity epidemic is all of us, each one of us. If we become a experienced consumer, driving the market to a healthy performance, it will be the main driver to the solution in the long term.
If you allow me to add something, Anton?
Absolutely. I was just about to ask you for the clarification.
Yeah. One major policy of this current federal government is in terms of the nutritional labeling. In this new government that we have, it is obligatory to put what we call seals in the food packaging label, okay? And the seals, the idea is to inform the consumer with a very simple signal that the food has excess sugar, excess calories, excess sodium, excess fat. So I think that this food labeling is pushing the industry to modify their products, their formulations, in order to lower the number of seals that they have in the nutritional label. I think that it has been very well viewed by the customer, because it's very easy to detect a food that is that it has excess sugars, calories, fats, saturated fats, and even sodium, which, by the way, are very much related to the chronic diseases that I was talking about. Mm-hmm.
Anton, can I add something else to this conversation?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you.
And I bring this in this conversation a personal story, because my background is also in design, and I'm designing a solution, and I'm designing also like new way of teaching in, and we also thought that we are in a new age of education in which we have to bring the students to use more empathy to better understand the situation and the scenarios. And seems to be silly now that we're talking about numbers, like we mentioned before, like those are like big numbers, but many times we actually don't understand how much the students and the young people know and don't know about it. And I do have a personal story I want to share, which is also related to labels. I've been working for more than 10 years in US universities, and we designed a design thinking workshop for food security for university students. And practically this workshop was based on the fact that we needed to connect the president of the university with the young students and to talk about the nutritional point and the food security issue inside of the university, because this is a big issue as well inside of the universities. And we use the design thinking because design thinking, also like role modeling, role playing are helping people to understand by emotion what exactly is the scenarios that we live every single day. And one of the issue here was to give the students kind of hide food without any label, and later on put the label on the screen. And those food that we provided to the students and the president of the university were healthy food, sustainable food, so hunger food, and I don't remember the fourth, I'm sorry. And then we put the label on the screen, and nobody was able to connect the label with the meal that they had in front of them. So the issue is that also if the labels include many information, include many instruction on how to eat are not so stronger on the way, and they are not so impactful on the way how we eat. On the other side, I've seen by using design method and using creativity, more creativity, we are able to, in a way, redesign some of the food systems, some of the food interaction, some of the food connection that we do have currently in our food system that really can change behaviors. And I do have also the proof in South of America by the improvement and the big evolution of the Red Latinoamericana, the food design, which became really an impactful instrument used by university professors and students to redesign and to rethink completely the food system, to provide what we mentioned before, the community engagement, the social approaches, the holistic and systemic approach by different stakeholders and people, and of course, dietary patterns that can be, in a way, more adapted to what is the current scenarios, because we didn't mention COVID-19 in all of this discussion, which I think is one of the key points, and something for sure happened after and during the COVID-19 that was impacting so much on the way how we eat. So this only for saying that labels is true. It's one of the tool we can use it, but there are so many other instruments and there are so many other way, and also creative and emergent way we can do it to help the people to modify their pattern and their diets as well.
Thank you very much for that. And this fits a lot into a lot of the introductory remarks as well and questions. Professor Carlos saying, there's not one simple solution. There's lots of many interconnected solutions. Now, I do want to take the opportunity to ask some of the questions sent in by the audience, and thank you very much. We've got about 10 minutes left, so if you do have any questions, send through now. An anonymous attendee has asked the question, has the effect of mental health on the prevalence of obesity been evaluated? I'm gonna add on to that, has the effect of mental health as well as COVID-19 on the prevalence of obesity been evaluated? I'll just go straight to the way I started. Professor Sergio, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, I have seen recent research related to mental health. Today, it is known that the microbiome of the hindgut or the intestinal affects the mental health. And also some type of proteins affect mental health. That's the reason there are some trends in the nutritional issues related to the wheat gluten and other type of proteins that affect mental health. But the research is relatively new, in my opinion, and we need more time in order to have better conclusions, okay? But there are several research groups around the world who are extensively working with the effects of different phytochemicals, proteins, and the effects of the microbiome on mental health. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. I'll just clarify. I think the question is actually asking, rather than obesity on mental health on obesity, so the other way around, as in depression, yes, and overeating. Is there any research into that area as well?
There is a relationship between oxidative stress and obesity with mental health. There is no doubt about it, okay? If you have a oxidative stress, you have more mental health issues or problems, okay? That is well known. But these phytochemicals also interact with the microbiome, and there is a synergistic type of effects, okay? In other words, if you eat more antioxidants and some type of proteins, you can have a better health, better brain health, okay? Especially also with associated with neurodegenerative diseases, which are very common in geriatric people. Okay.
Thank you very much. Professor Carlos, do you have anything that you'd like to add on to Professor Sergio?
Yes, thank you. Mental health is one of the main drivers of the obesity epidemic. Anxiety, diseases of food behavior, depression are very common disorders that has contributed for the increase of the obesity prevalence. And now, for example, in the COVID pandemic, there are several surveys that has shown a 4 kilograms increase in the almost 6 months period in several Latin American countries. Of course, the decrease in physical activity contributes, but also depression, sleep disorders, the diet becoming all the same every day has contributed for this acute increase in the mean body weight of the population. We can talk almost 1 hour about the impact of mental health in obesity, but is perhaps the main challenge to be solved when we face the obese patient.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And I'll give Dr. Sonia an opportunity if you'd like to add anything further. No. That's absolutely fine. This one is also a bit of a technical question from another anonymous attendee. How do functional foods contribute to the current problem if the main factor is serving size? Dr. Sergio, do you have a response to that?
Yes, very much. That's my research area. Functional foods are critically important in today's diet. In order to improve health, you need to select those foods that have important phytonutrients or nutraceutical compounds that we call. The most important ones definitely are antioxidants like phenolic acids, flavonoids, triterpenes, and different chemical compounds that protect the human system against oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is the main cause of all chronic diseases and cancer, and therefore the selection of foods should be based on these phytochemicals. These phytochemicals are usually removed or lost during processing. For instance, when you make a refined wheat flour, you lose like 80–90% of the phytochemicals associated to the whole grain, okay? Now, in terms of legumes and pulses, in my opinion, these are the best grains that you can include in your diet in order to provide these phytochemicals. Phenolics, flavonoids, anthocyanidins, phytoesterols, different compounds that are very well related to prevention of oxidative stress. Therefore, what I will recommend is definitely return to the consumption of whole grains, especially pulses and legumes, and also the higher consumption of vegetables and fruits. Lower amounts of animal foods and less processed foods, because some of these phytochemicals are also lost during thermal processes or other processes, okay?
Thank you very much for that. I'll open up the floor if anyone would like to add anything further to Professor Sergio's comments. Yes, please, Professor Carlos.
The comments that Sergio have just shared with us highlights the importance of focusing in the quality of the food rather than the total amount of calories of the diets.
Yes.
Food insecurity should be redesigned in the parameters that we evaluate. If we continue evaluating in total calories, you are missing the point.
And
Yeah.
if I can add something to this on the quality, I would actually
Yes,
add
please.
something related to the double pyramid concept that I actually mentioned before, because it's an excellent summary. I strongly suggest you to go through and check in also from the different region and the different culture origin they have it, because it gives like a summary of medicine, nutrition, impact of our choice in the planet, but also on the other side, with its graphics, it's very easy and simple consumer educational tool that can really help the people to follow, not just as an instruction, but instead to understand what kind of food we're eating without getting any calories in, but instead getting this kind of layers in which we actually understand the impact of our choice and behaviors.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Sonia. We are very quickly running out of time. So I will give everyone 15 seconds to provide a brief summary of the key takeaway. Dr. Sonia, I'm going to challenge you first with 15 seconds for a conclusion for today.
Yeah, I think
Well,
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'll go Professor Professor Sergio.
Yeah. No. You can start, Dr. Sonia. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Please go ahead. No. Don't worry. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is that it is very important to select foods based on whole grains, because whole grains contains almost all the phytochemicals that we talk about, and also whole grains contain less caloric density, more dietary fiber, and especially whole grains of the pulses and legumes, okay? If you base your diet in these whole grains and fruits and vegetables, for sure, you're gonna be in very good health, okay?
Perfect. Thank you. Professor Carlos, do you have a 15-second summary that you can share?
Thank you for the invitation. It has been a pleasure to be part of this live forum. And the obesity solution is not a simple one. Universities has a huge challenge in front of them. They should be part of the solution by preparing the population to take informed decisions about the food. I repeat that we all are part of the solutions. We need to empower our population to assume the challenge of being healthy. And thank you, Anton, for your coordination.
Thank you very much for joining us. And finally, Dr. Sonia, your brief 15-second summary.
So I agree, of course, about the amount of plant-based food that can really help, such as fruit, vegetables, and well grain. But from the other side, we need to adopt a varied and a balanced diet to promote our health, while also reducing our contribution to climate change. So my ending is one health. Health means human health and of course, planet health at the same time. So thank you so much for this invitation and for your coordination.
I think that is the perfect way to end it, to really show the way in which health is interconnected globally. Thank you very much, Professor Sergio, Professor Carlos, and Dr. Sonia for joining me. Thank you very much to the audience for joining us as well. And I would like to make a special mention to the team based in Singapore with me. If you can hear the birds are just starting to wake up, it has just gone past 6 a.m. in Singapore. Thank you as well to Coursera for Campus and Tech de Monterrey for their support of this. I mentioned at the start, we have, this is sort of a precursor to next week, where we'll have the inaugural QS Americas event, which will be themed on a new beginning, the next decade of higher education in the Americas. You can also get a copy of the Latin American rankings that have just come out on Wednesday. I believe it might have been Tuesday, your time. You can also go to qs.com and go to the reports to get the latest higher ed report looking at Latin American education. It's called Which Way is South? Remapping Latin American Higher Education. Otherwise, I'm Anton John Crace. Thank you very much again for joining me and enjoy the rest of your day.